The small ship spun through space like a leaf in a storm. Jake Morrison gripped the controls with both hands, trying to steady the vessel as alarms screamed around him. Red lights flashed across every screen in the cockpit. Something had gone terribly wrong. He was supposed to be on a simple mission: scout the outer planets, collect some data, and return home in 3 days. Easy work for an experienced pilot. But then the anomaly appeared out of nowhere, a swirling mass of energy that pulled his ship in like a hungry mouth. Now he was falling toward an unknown planet, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The ship hit the atmosphere hard. Heat built up around the hull as friction burned the air. Jake could feel the vessel shaking apart around him. He pulled the emergency lever, but only half the landing thrusters fired. The ship tilted sideways and began to spin. Trees rushed up to meet him. Jake saw a flash of green and brown before the impact threw him against his restraints. Metal screamed. Glass shattered. Then everything went black. When Jake opened his eyes, pain filled his body. His left arm hung at a wrong angle. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. The cockpit was crushed around him, but he was alive. Somehow he was alive. It took him an hour to pull himself free from the wreckage. Every movement sent waves of pain through his broken arm. He stumbled away from the smoking ship and collapsed under a large tree. The forest around him was silent except for strange bird calls in the distance. Jake checked his supplies. His emergency pack had survived, giving him water, some food bars, and a basic medical kit. He wrapped his arm as best he could with one hand, then swallowed 2 pain pills. His communication device was smashed. The ship's beacon was destroyed. Nobody knew where he was. 3 days passed in a blur of pain and fear. Jake found a small stream for water. He ate his rations slowly, making them last. At night, he heard large creatures moving through the forest. He built a fire to keep them away, but his wood supply was running low. His arm had swollen badly and fever was setting in. On the 4th morning, Jake knew he was in serious trouble. The fever made his thoughts fuzzy. He could barely stand. He sat with his back against a tree, wondering if this was how it would end. Alone on a planet nobody had ever heard of. That was when he saw her. She moved through the trees like a shadow, tall and powerful. At first, Jake thought the fever was making him see things. But she stepped into the clearing and he knew she was real. She stood at least 7 feet tall. Her skin had a pale blue tint that seemed to shimmer in the morning light. She wore armor made of dark leather and metal, fitted perfectly to her athletic frame. Long white hair fell past her shoulders, pulled back from her face with braided cords. Her eyes were large and golden with vertical pupils like a cat. She carried a long spear in one hand and a curved blade at her hip. Everything about her spoke of danger and strength. Jake tried to stand, to reach for the small knife in his belt, but his body would not cooperate. He slumped back against the tree. The alien warrior approached slowly, her golden eyes studying him. Jake could see her making calculations, deciding if he was a threat. When she got close enough, she knelt down and reached out one hand. Her fingers were long and elegant, tipped with short claws. She touched his forehead and her eyes widened slightly. She pulled back his makeshift bandage and examined his broken arm. Then she made a sound, something between a hum and a growl. It sounded like concern. Jake tried to speak, but his mouth was too dry. The alien woman pulled a container from her belt and held it to his lips. The water inside tasted strange, slightly sweet, but it was the best thing Jake had ever drunk. She let him drink his fill, then stood and looked around the clearing. She made a decision. Jake could see it in her face. She reached down and lifted him as if he weighed nothing at all. Jake groaned as the movement jarred his broken arm, but she adjusted her grip to be more gentle. Then she began to walk, carrying him through the forest. They traveled for what felt like hours. Jake drifted in and out of consciousness, catching glimpses of strange plants and unusual rock formations. Finally, they reached a cave hidden behind a waterfall. The alien woman carried him inside and laid him carefully on a bed of soft moss. Over the next few hours, she worked on his injuries. She had supplies in the cave, things she must have brought for her own survival. She made a paste from plants and spread it on his cuts. The pain faded almost immediately. She set his broken arm with smooth wooden splints and wrapped it with strips of cloth. She gave him more of the sweet water and something that looked like dried meat. Jake watched her work, amazed by her skill and gentleness. This warrior who could probably kill him with one hand was taking care of him like he was precious. When she finished, she sat back and looked at him with those golden eyes. Jake lifted his good hand and pointed at himself. "Jake," he said clearly. She tilted her head, curious. He repeated the gesture and the word. "Jake." Understanding dawned in her eyes. She pointed at herself and made a sound, a combination of clicks and syllables that his human mouth could never reproduce. But she saw his struggle and simplified it. "Zara," she said, making it easier for him. Jake smiled despite the pain. "Zara." She nodded once, and something that might have been a smile crossed her face. It was the beginning of something neither of them could have predicted. A human and an alien, thrown together by chance on an unknown world. Outside the cave, the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of purple and orange. Jake fell asleep to the sound of the waterfall and the presence of his unlikely savior sitting guard nearby. For the first time in 4 days, he felt safe. Zara watched the strange alien sleep. She had been tracking a dangerous predator when she found him. Her trial required her to hunt alone for 30 days, proving her worth as a warrior. Helping another being, especially an unknown species, was not part of the plan. But she had seen his pain and his courage. She had seen how he tried to stand even with a broken body. Honor demanded that she help him. Her people valued strength, but they also valued compassion for the worthy. She touched the small metal tag she had taken from his uniform, studying the strange symbols carved into it. Whatever language this was, she did not know it. But she would learn. She had 2 weeks before her people came looking for her. 2 weeks to heal this human and perhaps understand where he came from. Zara looked at Jake's sleeping face and felt something stir in her chest. She did not know what the future held, but she knew one thing with certainty. This meeting would change everything. Jake Morrison stood at the window of his small apartment, watching the rain fall on Earth's surface. 15 years had passed since Epsilon 7, but the memories were as fresh as yesterday. He could still see Zara's golden eyes, still remember the way she had smiled when he finally made her laugh. His apartment was simple and clean. On the desk sat a worn journal, its pages filled with sketches and notes. Jake had drawn Zara's face dozens of times, trying to capture the exact shape of her features, the way her white hair caught the light. His friend Danny said he was obsessed, but Danny did not understand. Nobody could understand. The day Zara left had been the hardest of Jake's life. After 2 weeks in that cave, she had taught him how to survive. She showed him which plants were safe to eat and which ones would kill him. She taught him how to track water and build shelter. They communicated with gestures and drawings, creating their own language. But her people had called for her. Jake remembered the sound of the horn echoing through the forest. Zara's face had changed when she heard it, becoming torn between duty and something else. She had looked at Jake for a long moment, and he saw the pain in her eyes. She left him with supplies and activated a beacon that would bring human rescuers. Before she went, she had taken the metal tag from his uniform, the one with his name and identification number. She held it to her chest, then disappeared into the trees. Jake had called after her, but she did not turn back. The rescue team found him 3 days later. They asked questions about his crash, about how he survived. Jake told them most of the truth, but he left out Zara. He said he survived on his own using his training. If he reported meeting an unknown alien species, it would trigger investigations and military operations. He could not do that to her. Now Jake worked as a cargo hauler, flying supplies between colonies on the frontier. It was simple work, far below his skills as a trained scout pilot. But it kept him near the edge of explored space, near where Zara's people might be. Every time he heard rumors of a new species or unexplored territory, his heart would race with hope. Danny Chen, his co-pilot and only real friend, walked into the apartment carrying 2 cups of coffee. "Still looking out that window like something's going to appear?" Jake took the coffee without turning. "Just thinking about her again." It was not a question. Danny had figured out years ago that Jake was haunted by something from his crash. "You know, most people would have moved on by now. I'm not most people." Danny sighed and sat down on the couch. "The news is running stories about that new species. The Valeth Empire. They made formal contact with the Earth Alliance last month. Trade agreements and all that political stuff." Jake turned quickly. "Show me." Danny pulled out his tablet and brought up the news feed. Images of tall, blue-skinned aliens appeared on the screen. They wore formal robes and diplomatic clothing, standing beside human ambassadors. Jake's hands shook as he scrolled through the pictures, studying each face. None of them were Zara. "They look like what you described," Danny said quietly. "The ones from your crash." Jake nodded, unable to speak. The Valith. So that was what her people were called. He read every article, absorbing every detail. The Valith Empire was old and vast, spanning dozens of star systems. They were warriors and explorers, bound by strict codes of honor. Seeing them in formal clothes was strange. Jake could only picture Zara in her leather armor, spear in hand. "You could try to find her," Danny suggested. "Now that we know who they are." "How?" Jake gestured at the screen. "Look at how many there are. Billions of them spread across dozens of worlds. And I don't even know if she wants to be found." But that night, Jake could not sleep. He sat at his computer and began searching through public Valith databases. The Empire had opened some records to humanity as part of the diplomatic process. Military rosters, ship registries, colony information. It was a start. Far across the galaxy, on the Valith homeworld, Commander Zara Kai stood on the bridge of her flagship. She wore the dark armor of a fleet commander, decorated with medals earned through years of service. Her white hair was pulled back in the traditional warrior's braid. At her neck, hidden beneath her armor, hung a small metal tag on a chain. She studied the star charts on the display screen, looking at the border regions between Valith and human space. Somewhere out there, across impossible distances, was Jake Morrison. She had never stopped looking for him. Her sister Kirava entered the bridge, young and energetic. "Commander, the diplomatic reports from the human meetings are ready for review." Zara took the data pad without looking away from the star charts. "Thank you, Kira." Kira lingered, studying her sister's face. "You're looking at those border systems again, the ones near Epsilon 7. I'm reviewing patrol routes. You've been reviewing the same routes for 15 years. Kira moved closer, lowering her voice. "Sister, what happened during your trial? You came back different, quieter, and you've never stopped searching for something." Zara finally looked at her sister. Kira was perceptive, too perceptive sometimes. "I met someone. Someone who showed me that strength comes in many forms. Someone who changed how I see the universe." "A warrior from another clan?" "No, a human." Kira's eyes widened. "During your trial?" "But that was before first contact. Before we even knew humans existed." "I know." Zara touched the place where the metal tag rested against her skin. "He crashed on Epsilon 7. He was injured and alone. I helped him survive. We had 2 weeks together before my trial ended. I had to leave him, but I never forgot." "Have you tried to find him?" "I've searched every database I can access. But human records are vast, and I only have a name. Jake Morrison. It's a common name in their culture." "There are thousands of them." Kira took her sister's hand. "The universe brought you together once. Perhaps it will do so again." Zara wanted to believe that, but the galaxy was cruel and vast. The chances of finding one specific human among billions were almost zero. Still, she kept looking. Every time she accessed human news feeds or diplomatic reports, she searched for any mention of a scout pilot named Jake Morrison. She had risen through the military ranks quickly, earning respect for her strategic mind and unusual compassion. Other commanders led with aggression and pride. Zara led with careful planning and genuine care for her troops. Her soldiers were loyal to her in ways that terrified her rivals, but none of them knew about the human who had changed her. None of them knew that she carried a piece of him next to her heart. The Valith Empire's first contact with humanity had been tense but peaceful. Both sides were cautious, testing boundaries and establishing rules. Trade agreements were signed. Borders were drawn. Cultural exchanges began. Zara had volunteered for every mission that brought her closer to human space. She had walked among humans on several occasions, attending diplomatic functions and trade negotiations. Each time her eyes scanned the crowds, hoping against hope that she might see a familiar face. But Jake was never there. He was probably living a quiet life somewhere, far from the frontier. Perhaps he had forgotten her. That thought hurt more than any wound she had taken in battle. "Commander," one of her officers called out, "we're receiving a priority message from the High Council. There's been an incident at the human colony on New Haven." Zara straightened, pushing her personal thoughts aside. "What kind of incident?" "An attack. Rogue elements from the Valith military. The extremist faction that opposes peace with humans." Zara's blood went cold. This was what she had feared. Not everyone in the Empire supported diplomatic relations with humanity. Some believed humans were weak and unworthy of respect. These extremists had been making threats for months, but this was the first actual violence. How bad is it? Hundreds dead. The colony is requesting assistance. The High Council is assembling a joint task force with human military. You've been selected to command it. Zara nodded slowly. A joint task force meant working directly with human officers. It meant going deep into human territory. It meant another chance, however small, to search for Jake. Prepare the ship, she ordered. We leave within the hour. As her crew rushed to follow orders, Zara touched the metal tag beneath her armor. Jake's identification number was worn smooth from 15 years of touching. She had memorized every symbol, even though she did not know what they all meant. I'm coming, she whispered to the memory of him. Wherever you are, I'm getting closer. Neither Jake nor Zara knew that their paths were about to cross again. Neither knew that the crisis at New Haven would bring them together in ways they could not imagine. The universe had separated them once, but now it was pulling them back together, and this time nothing would keep them apart. The alarm woke Jake from a restless sleep. He had been dreaming of Epsilon 7 again, of golden eyes and white hair. The harsh sound pulled him back to reality as red emergency lights flooded his cargo ship's cabin. Danny, what's happening? Jake rushed to the cockpit, pulling on his shirt. Danny's face was pale as he stared at the communication screen. New Haven colony is under attack. Multiple ships. They're asking for any vessels in the area to assist with evacuation. Jake felt his blood run cold. New Haven was a peaceful settlement, home to 20,000 civilians, families, children. How far are we? 20 minutes at full speed. Then let's move. The Wanderer was not a military ship, but she was fast. Jake pushed the engines hard, racing toward the colony. As they got closer, they could see the devastation. 3 large warships circled the settlement, firing on the defensive shields. Explosions bloomed across the colony's surface. Those are Valith ships, Danny said, checking the identification codes. But the signatures are wrong. They're not responding to standard hails. Rogues, Jake muttered. He had heard about the extremist faction that opposed peace with humanity. Now they were proving their hatred with violence. Jake brought the Wanderer in low, dodging weapons fire. The cargo bay was large enough to hold about 60 people. It was not much, but it was something. He landed near an evacuation point where colonists were gathered, terrified and confused. For the next 3 hours, Jake made trip after trip, ferrying people to safety. He took families to the orbital station, then returned for more. Smoke filled the air. Buildings burned. But Jake kept flying, kept saving lives, even as his ship took damage from near misses. On his 6th trip, the shields finally failed. Jake watched a family of 4 sprint toward his ship, a mother and father carrying 2 small children. They were 30 feet away when one of the warships fired at a nearby building. The explosion threw debris everywhere. Jake did not think. He ran down the boarding ramp and grabbed the closest child, a girl maybe 5 years old. Danny appeared behind him and scooped up the other child. The parent stumbled aboard, bleeding but alive. Jake got everyone inside and lifted off just as another explosion ripped through the landing area. That was too close, Danny gasped, strapping the family into safety harnesses. Yeah. Jake's hands shook on the controls. But we got them. By the time military ships arrived to drive off the attackers, Jake had saved 83 people. The Wanderer was damaged, her hull scarred and one engine barely functioning. But everyone he carried had survived. Captain Lisa Hayes of the Earth Alliance Navy watched the footage of Jake's rescue operations. She was a career officer, practical and no-nonsense, with short dark hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Her orders were to assemble a joint task force to hunt down the rogue Valith ships and prevent a war. Who's the cargo pilot? She asked her second-in-command, Jake Morrison. Former scout pilot, now runs supplies on the frontier. No military service beyond basic training. But his file says he's one of the best natural pilots anyone's seen. Lisa made a decision. Requisition his ship and services. We need someone who knows this region, and I like people who run toward danger instead of away from it. 2 days later, Jake received orders to report to the Joint Task Force flagship. His ship had been repaired by military engineers, better than before. Danny was excited about working with the military, but Jake felt nervous. He did not like attention or questions about his past. The flagship was massive, a joint construction with both human and Valith design elements. Jake and Danny were escorted through corridors filled with personnel from both species. The Valeth warriors were impressive up close, tall and powerful, moving with deadly grace. Jake studied each one they passed, his heart beating faster. Could Zara be here? Would he recognize her after 15 years? Would she recognize him? They reached the conference room, and the escort opened the door. Captain Morrison, Captain Hayes is waiting inside with the Valeth commander. Jake stepped through the door, and his world stopped. She stood at the head of the table, tall and commanding in dark armor decorated with medals and rank insignia. Her white hair was pulled back in intricate braids. Her golden eyes were studying a holographic display of star systems. 15 years had passed, but Jake would know her anywhere. Zara looked up as the door opened, probably expecting another human officer. Her eyes met Jake's, and he watched every emotion cross her face in the span of a heartbeat. Shock, disbelief, recognition, joy. Her breath caught, and for just a moment, the composed military commander vanished. She was just Zara, the warrior who had saved his life on Epsilon 7, the one who had taught him to survive, the one he had never stopped thinking about. Captain Morrison, Captain Hayes said, gesturing to a seat. Thank you for joining us. This is Commander Zarakai of the Valeth fleet. She'll be leading this operation. Jake could barely hear Hayes's words. He forced himself to look away from Zara and nod professionally. Captain Commander. Zara recovered her composure with visible effort. Captain Morrison. Your reputation precedes you. Your actions at New Haven saved many lives, her voice. Jake had almost forgotten how it sounded. That slight musical quality to her words. She spoke English now, flawlessly, but with an accent that made his chest ache. Just did what anyone would do, Jake managed to say. Not anyone, Zara replied, her golden eyes holding his for a moment longer than necessary. Only those with true courage. The briefing began, but Jake struggled to focus. Zara explained the situation in clear, professional terms. The rogue faction was led by a warlord named Thrace, who believed humanity was weak and corrupting Valeth honor. He had 10 ships and possibly hundreds of followers. If he was not stopped, he would provoke a war that neither species wanted. Jake watched Zara as she spoke, noting how she had changed. She carried herself with authority now, every movement precise and controlled, but he could see traces of the warrior he had known, the one who had gently set his broken arm and smiled at his attempts to pronounce her name. Did she still have his identification tag? Had she thought about him over the years? Captain Hayes outlined the mission. They would track Thrace's fleet through the border regions, using a combination of human and Valeth ships. Jake's vessel, the Wanderer, would serve as a scout due to its speed and his knowledge of the area. Commander Zarakai will coordinate all operations, Hayes concluded. Captain Morrison, you'll report directly to her for mission assignments. Jake nodded, not trusting himself to speak. Direct communication with Zara. Hours, maybe days of working together. He did not know if that was a blessing or torture. As the briefing ended and officers filed out, Jake found himself alone with Zara for a moment. She stood with her back to him, studying the star charts. Her hand rose to her neck, touching something beneath her armor. Jake, she said softly, not turning around. It was the first time she had used his name. Zara, I looked for you. Her voice was barely above a whisper. For 15 years, I searched every database, every record. I never stopped looking. Jake's throat tightened. I looked for you too. When your people made contact, I thought maybe I could find you, but there were so many and I didn't know where to start. She turned then and Jake saw tears in her golden eyes. 15 years of separation, of wondering and hoping reflected in her face. I never forgot you. Not one day. I never forgot you either. They stood there, two people from different worlds finally together again after an impossible amount of time. Jake wanted to cross the room and hold her, but they were on a military ship surrounded by crew members who could enter at any moment. We have to focus on the mission, Zara said, though her voice shook slightly. Thrace is dangerous and many lives depend on stopping him. I know, but after? She looked at him with such hope that his heart broke. After this is over, we can talk. Really talk. About everything. I'd like that. The door opened and Captain Hayes entered, followed by several officers. Zara straightened immediately, her professional mask falling back into place. Captain Hayes, I was just discussing patrol routes with Captain Morrison. Hayes looked between them, her sharp eyes noting the tension in the air. She was smart enough to sense something was happening, but professional enough not to comment. Very good, Commander. Morrison, your first scout mission launches in 3 hours. Get your ship ready. Jake nodded and left the conference room. Danny was waiting in the corridor, practically bouncing with excitement. So, how did it go? What's the Valeth commander like? Jake looked back at the closed door, remembering golden eyes and the sound of his name spoken softly. It's complicated. Over the next few days, Jake flew reconnaissance missions while the task force tracked Thrace's movements. Each mission required him to report to Zara, giving them brief moments of private communication. They maintained professional distance in front of others, but when they were alone, even over communication channels, the walls began to crack. Your piloting has improved, Zara said during one call, reviewing his scan data. I had a good teacher once. She showed me that survival is about more than strength. Zara smiled and Jake felt his heart soar. That smile was the same one he remembered from the cave on Epsilon 7. She sounds wise. She was. Is. She taught me that compassion and courage are the same thing. Jake. Her voice softened. The trap closed around Jake's ship like a fist. 3 rogue Valeth fighters appeared from behind an asteroid, their weapons already firing. Warning alarms screamed through the Wanderer's cockpit as Jake threw the ship into a hard turn. Danny, reroute power to rear shields. Already on it. Danny's fingers flew across the controls. But we're not going to last long against 3 fighters. Jake pushed the ship through a narrow gap between 2 asteroids, using the debris field as cover. The fighters pursued, their weapons tearing chunks off the floating rocks. One blast hit the Wanderer's side, making the whole ship shudder. This is Morrison to task force, Jake called over the emergency channel. I've got 3 hostiles on me, coordinate sending now. Could use some help. Morrison, this is Zara Kai. Her voice cut through the chaos, steady and commanding. Hold position. I'm sending fighters to your location. Not sure I can hold that long. Another blast rocked the ship. Red lights flashed across every screen. One engine was failing and the shields were down to 30%. Jake dove between more asteroids trying to buy time, but the rogue fighters were skilled pilots. They knew he was trapped. Then something changed. Jake saw the lead fighter suddenly break off, its pilot yelling something in the Valeth language. 2 massive warships had appeared on the sensors, flying in fast. One was human designed, the other pure Valeth. The cavalry had arrived, but more important, Jake saw a small command shuttle breaking away from the Valeth warship, heading straight for his position. That was not standard tactics. Command officers did not fly into active combat zones unless something was desperately wrong. Morrison, I'm coming to you. Zara's voice was tight with something that sounded like fear. Keep those shields up. Zara, what are you doing? You can't. I'm not losing you again. The raw emotion in her voice silenced any argument. Not after 15 years. Not ever. The rogue fighters tried to intercept her shuttle, but Zara flew like she had been born to it. She weaved through weapons fire with impossible precision, her return shots perfect and deadly. 1 fighter exploded, the second retreated. The third tried to come at Jake from below, but Zara was already there, her weapons cutting through its shields. Jake, lock onto my signal and follow me. We're getting you out of the kill zone. Jake matched her course, flying in formation with her shuttle. Together they raced away from the ambush point, with the 2 warships providing cover fire. When they finally reached safe space, Jake's hands were shaking on the controls. Thank you, he said quietly over their private channel. Always. Zara's voice was soft. We need to talk. Really talk. Not on a mission channel. Not in a conference room. Just us. Where? I have a private observation deck on my flagship. Can you dock with us? Give me 10 minutes. Jake handed control to Danny and cleaned himself up as best he could. His heart was racing, and not from the combat. 15 years of questions and memories were about to come crashing down. When he stepped off the Wanderer onto Zara's flagship, a young Valeth warrior was waiting to escort him. The observation deck was quiet and empty, with massive windows showing the stars. Zara stood facing the glass, her armor reflecting the starlight. She turned when she heard him enter, and Jake saw that she had removed her helmet. Her white hair fell loose around her shoulders, just like he remembered. Hi, Jake said, suddenly feeling like that injured pilot in the cave again. Hi. Zara smiled, and it was beautiful. I've practiced so many things to say to you, so many speeches in my head, but now that you're here, I cannot find the words. Jake walked closer. I know the feeling. I've imagined this moment 10,000 times. It never went like this. How did you imagine it? Less weapons fire. More time to prepare. Maybe somewhere more romantic than a warship. Zara laughed, and the sound made Jake's chest ache with happiness. This is very us, though. Meeting again in the middle of danger. That's true. Jake stopped a few feet from her, close enough to see the flecks of lighter gold in her eyes.
Zara, I need to know something.
Did you mean what you said? That you looked for me? Every day. She reached to her neck and pulled out a chain. On it hung his identification tag, worn smooth but still readable. I kept this with me always. Through every battle, every mission, it was my reminder that there was someone out there worth fighting for. Jake's vision blurred with tears. She had kept it. After 15 years, she had kept it close to her heart. I drew pictures of you, dozens of them. My friend Danny thought I was crazy, but I couldn't forget your face. I couldn't forget those 2 weeks. They were the most important 2 weeks of my life. Zara stepped closer. You were injured and alone, but you never stopped fighting. You showed me that courage is not about being the strongest. It's about facing fear with your whole heart. You changed me, Jake. You saved me. Not just from dying, but from being someone who only saw the galaxy as empty and cold. You showed me there was beauty and connection out there. They were standing very close now, closer than military protocol would allow. Jake could see her breathing faster, could see the emotion in her eyes. 15 years of separation hung between them like a weight. Jake, I have to tell you something. Zara's voice shook. When I left you on Epsilon 7, it was the hardest thing I ever did. I wanted to stay. I wanted to take you with me. But I was afraid. Afraid my people would not understand. Afraid of breaking my vows. Afraid that what I felt was impossible. What did you feel? She looked directly into his eyes. I loved you. Even after just 2 weeks, I loved you. And I have loved you every day since. I know it makes no sense. I know our species barely knew each other existed. But my heart does not care about logic. Jake felt like he could not breathe. She loved him. She had loved him this whole time. I loved you too. I love you. When you left, part of me stayed on that planet with you. I've been trying to find my way back ever since. Zara reached up and touched his face gently, her clawed fingers careful against his skin. I never want to be apart from you again. Then don't be. They kissed then, finally closing 15 years of distance. It was gentle and desperate at the same time, full of longing and relief. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were crying. We're in the middle of a mission, Zara said, laughing through her tears. This is completely unprofessional. I don't care. Neither do I. They stood together, holding each other until the emergency alarm shattered the moment. Zara's communication device crackled to life. Commander, we've located Thrace's flagship. He's heading toward the Terminus system. We need you on the bridge immediately. Zara closed her eyes, clearly not wanting to let go. But duty called. I'm coming. She looked at Jake. We have to finish this mission. But after, I promise you, we'll have all the time we need. I'll hold you to that. They returned to their duties, but everything had changed. Captain Hayes noticed immediately when they both arrived on the bridge. The tension between them was different now, softer and more open. She said nothing, but her knowing look told Jake that she understood. The chase led them to Terminus, a dead world orbiting a dying star. Scans showed massive energy readings coming from the surface. Thrace's ships were in orbit along with what looked like a huge ancient structure. What is that? Captain Hayes demanded. Zara studied the readings, her face growing pale. It's a weapon. From the old ones, the civilization that came before ours. We have stories about these devices, but we thought they were myths. What does it do? If Thrace activates it, it will destroy every inhabited system within 50 light years. Billions will die, both our species and others. Jake felt sick. Can we stop it? We have to destroy the power core. But it's inside the structure, protected by radiation that will kill anyone within minutes. It's a suicide mission. Zara turned to Captain Hayes. I'll volunteer to go. This is my responsibility. No. Jake stepped forward. We go together. If it's suicide, then we face it together. Jake, you cannot. Yes, I can. I found you after 15 years. I'm not letting you go alone into certain death. Zara looked at him with such love and pain that it hurt. She knew he would not back down. She knew him too well. Captain Hayes will need radiation suits. The best you have. Hayes nodded slowly. We have 2 experimental suits. They should give you 30 minutes instead of 5. That's the best I can do. Then it will have to be enough. As preparations began, Jake and Zara stood together, knowing they might not survive the next few hours. But they were together, and that made even death seem bearable. They had found each other against impossible odds. Now they would save the galaxy or die trying. Danny pulled Jake aside before the mission. "You're really going through with this?" "I have to." "You love her that much?" Jake looked at Zara, who was checking her weapons and preparing for the mission. Even facing death, she was beautiful and strong. "More than anything in the universe." Danny hugged his friend. "Then come back. Both of you. We've got a lot more flying to do." The mission to Terminus was beginning, and nothing would ever be the same. The shuttle descended through Terminus's thin atmosphere, carrying Jake and Zara toward the ancient weapon. The dead world below was covered in gray dust and broken ruins, a tomb for a civilization that had vanished millions of years ago. Jake checked his radiation suit for the 3rd time. The heavy material was designed to block the deadly energy from the weapon's core, but it was experimental. 30 minutes of protection, Captain Hayes had said. After that, their cells would start to break down. Death would follow quickly. "Are you afraid?" Zara asked from the pilot's seat. She wore matching armor, her white hair tucked inside the helmet, terrified. Jake looked at her. "But I'm with you. That makes it bearable. I keep thinking about Epsilon 7, about how you trusted me when you had no reason to. I was a stranger, different from you in every way, but you let me help you. You saved my life, and you changed mine." Zara landed the shuttle near the weapon's entrance. "Whatever happens in there, I want you to know that these past few days, getting to see you again, they've been the happiest of my life." "Zara, let me finish." She turned to face him fully. "If we survive this, I want to stay with you. Not just for a visit or a mission. I want to build a life together. I know it will be complicated. Our people are still learning to trust each other. But I don't care. I love you, Jake Morrison. I've loved you since that cave on Epsilon 7. Jake took her gloved hand. "I love you too, and yes, whatever comes after this, we face it together. No more running. No more separation." They sealed their helmets and left the shuttle. The ancient structure loomed before them, built from materials that still puzzled scientists. It was huge and alien, covered in symbols from a dead language. Energy crackled along its surface, growing stronger as the weapon charged. Thrace had already entered with his elite guards. They could hear weapons fire from inside. The task force was engaging the rogue forces in orbit, trying to buy them time. Everything depended on reaching that core. Jake and Zara moved through corridors that had not seen life in ages. The walls hummed with power. Their radiation monitors began clicking almost immediately. The suits were working, but the exposure was already building. 28 minutes, Jake said, checking his wrist display. They found the first bodies near the core chamber. 3 of Thrace's guards killed by the radiation before they understood the danger. Their leader had sent them in without protection, using them to test the path. The cruelty of it made Jake sick. The core chamber was massive, a sphere of contained energy hovering in the center of the room. Conduits ran from it in every direction, pumping power to the weapon systems, and standing before the main controls was Thrace himself. Wearing ancient armor, he must have scavenged from the ruins. "Commander Zarakai," Thrace's voice boomed through his helmet speakers. "You come to stop me? You who betrayed our people by making peace with these weak humans?" Zara raised her weapon. "Stand away from the controls, Thrace. This ends now. You think I'm weak like you? That I fear death?" Thrace laughed. "I'm already dying from the radiation. I stayed here to make sure you cannot stop the weapon. In 10 minutes it will fire. Your precious humans and all their worlds will burn. There are Valith colonies in range too," Zara said. "Innocent people, families, children, you would kill them for your pride? They should not have lived near human space. This weapon will cleanse the galaxy of weakness." Thrace charged at them, moving fast despite the radiation. Jake fired his weapon, but Thrace's armor absorbed the shots. The warlord slammed into Zara, sending her crashing into the wall. Jake dove at him, but Thrace was incredibly strong. One blow sent Jake sprawling. Zara recovered and joined the fight. She was skilled, trained since childhood in combat, but Thrace had nothing to lose and rage on his side. They fought back and forth across the chamber, weapons fire and physical combat blurring together. Jake got up and ran to the controls. The symbols were alien and confusing, but there were patterns, energy flows, connection points. He started tracing circuits, trying to understand how to shut it down. Zara, keep him busy. I think I can figure this out. Zara fought with everything she had, matching Thrace blow for blow. But the warlord was wearing her down. In desperation, she grabbed one of the power conduits and tore it free. Electricity arced through the chamber. Thrace screamed as the current hit him, his ancient armor overloading. The warlord fell, his body twitching. As he died, his last act was to damage the main control panel with his weapon. The displays sparked and went dark. No! Jake stared at the ruined controls. He destroyed it. I can't shut it down remotely now. Zara joined him, checking her radiation monitor. 15 minutes. The suits are failing faster than expected. The energy from the weapon is accelerating the exposure. There has to be a manual shutdown, something inside the core itself. They studied the sphere of energy, seeing a small access port at its base. It was designed for maintenance, probably by the ancient species that built this place. Small enough for a person to crawl through, but the radiation inside would be intense. I'll go, Zara said immediately. Not alone. Jake took her hand. Remember what we said? Together. They crawled through the access port into the heart of the weapon. The radiation monitors screamed warnings. Their suits were degrading rapidly, the seals breaking down. Inside was a nightmare of power and light, conduits pulsing with deadly energy. At the center was a crystalline matrix, the weapon's brain. Jake could see it regulating the power flow, preparing to fire. They needed to disrupt the matrix, but there was no obvious way to do it. 10 minutes, Zara said quietly. Then we make it count. Jake pulled out his cutting torch. Help me remove these conduits. If we disconnect enough of them, maybe the matrix will shut down. They worked together, cutting through the alien technology. Each severed connection caused the weapon to shudder and whine. The energy fluctuated wildly. Twice they were nearly electrocuted when power arced between conduits. Their suits were failing. Jake could feel heat building inside his armor. His skin was starting to burn. Beside him, Zara was struggling too, but she did not stop working. 5 minutes, she gasped. The weapon is destabilizing. We need to cut 3 more conduits. They worked faster, ignoring the pain and the warnings from their suits. 3 conduits, 2, 1. The last conduit resisted Jake's torch. The tool was overheating, its power cell nearly dead. He pushed harder, willing it to cut through. Zara helped, using her physical strength to pull the conduit apart once Jake's torch weakened it enough. The matrix went dark. The weapon's hum died away. Throughout the structure, systems began shutting down. They had done it, but their suits were completely compromised. The radiation was cooking them from the inside. They had maybe 2 minutes before organ failure set in. We need to get out, Jake said, his voice weak. There's no time. The exit is too far. We stopped the weapon, but Zara did not finish. She did not need to. Jake pulled her close in the cramped space. Even through the failing suits, he could feel her presence. I don't regret this. Any of it, neither do I. Zara's voice was fading. I found you again. I got to tell you I loved you. That's more than most people get. They sat together in the dying core of an ancient weapon, holding each other as their bodies shut down. Jake thought about that cave on Epsilon 7, about the 2 weeks that had changed everything. He thought about Zara's smile and her courage and her golden eyes. I never forgot you, he whispered. I never forgot you either, Zara replied. The world started to fade. Jake's vision went dark. He felt Zara's hand in his, felt her heartbeat slowing. At least they were together. At least they had this. Then something changed. Jake heard voices shouting, felt hands grabbing him. Bright light flooded his dying vision. We have them. Captain Hayes's voice cut through the darkness. Emergency transport! Get medical teams ready now. Jake did not understand. The transport beam was not supposed to reach this deep inside the structure, but Hayes had brought the flagship dangerously close to the planet's surface, risking everything to get them out. The medical bay was chaos. Doctors from both species worked on Jake and Zara, fighting to save their radiation-poisoned bodies. Jake drifted in and out of consciousness, catching glimpses of worried faces and urgent voices. When he finally woke, 3 days had passed. His body hurt in ways he did not know were possible, but he was alive. The first thing he saw was Zara in the bed next to his, still unconscious but breathing. Machines monitored her vital signs, showing slow but steady improvement. Danny was asleep in a chair between their beds. Captain Hayes stood at the window, looking tired but relieved. She noticed Jake was awake and came over. "Welcome back, Morrison. You gave us a scare." "Zara," his voice was rough from disuse. "She's going to make it. Both of you got massive radiation doses, but we caught you in time. Another minute and—" Hayes did not finish that sentence. "You saved billions of lives. Both species owe you a debt. Is the war prevented?" "Yes. The Valith High Council has condemned Thrace and his followers. Your mission proved that humans and Valith can work together, can trust each other. Relations have actually improved." Over the next week, Jake and Zara slowly recovered. They spent their waking hours talking, sharing 15 years of stories. They laughed and cried and planned a future that once seemed impossible. Captain Hayes visited often,